Hello and welcome to the Hemet Film Festival podcast. I'm Gabriel Diaz, one of the co-founders and the host of the podcast. And today I'm joined by one of the other co-founders, Daniel Maggio. Now, I know it's been a long time since we've done an episode, so we have a couple things we'd like to make sure you guys know about as we head into this. Daniel, would you like to take it from there?
Sure, yeah. So the second annual Hemet Film Festival is coming up. It's going to be at the historic Hemet Theater again. It's November 8th, 9th, and 10th. So now we've expanded a 1 day event to a 2.5 day event. And so we're going to be showing short films all Saturday. And Saturday night, we have a special feature film presentation, Hemet or the Landlady Don't Drink Tea. And we're here with the two, I should say, the one creator, Brian Butler, and his brother Dan. And then Sunday we have a bunch of short films playing again, and a special presentation about Harvard Street music. There's going to be a concert film showing the final Saturday show that happened at the music store that recently closed down in town. And we have some other special things in store for the festival that we haven't announced yet. So stay tuned for all of that. That's basically it. HemetFilmFest.com. You can get tickets there. Passes are $20, and then each program is only $5. You can get them online or at the box office. That's it. Year number two.
Very excited for this next year. I'm
Thank
excited
you,
to
guys.
have,
Honored to be a part of it.
yeah, I'm so glad to have you here. Um, so I guess we should kind of table set a little bit. There's the odd chance that anyone listening hasn't necessarily had a chance to watch this yet. So how would you pitch this movie to someone listening, just so they kind of get the rough idea of what we're looking at?
I pitch it as a horror movie that has a slight political bent
Oh
to it,
no.
if you really dig, but it's not really on the surface. It's a horror movie. It's kind of a crime drama, and it's a dark comedy. And there's zombie characters in a subplot. There's a whole bunch of things going on. There's yeah, crime, drama, zombies, and a bit of a slasher element that comes out as the characters kind of become more and more paranoid. Things get violent and bloody. So
We
there's
also,
all
you
kinds of
have it
crazy.
listed as like a satire kind of thing. Would you say that stands out at the forefront, or you say it's more kind of in the background?
The satire stands out at the forefront. I think the like directly political stuff is kind of hidden, but the satirical elements are all there, especially with what the landlady character, her jargon and all the things that she says is clearly making fun of a certain type of worldview. And she seems, yeah, it's not a very subtle character. It is all right there on the surface with that character. And she's insane. I mean, yeah, she's crazy, but she thinks that her worldview and her moral stance is correct, and it's clear that she thinks it's her way or the highway. And she lives in Hemet, which is like a good place to live in an epidemic and a economic crisis, and people are, they want to live someplace with a good tax incentive, and so she's kind of got everyone under her thumb in this situation here. So it's kind of like the perfect place to set the movie, where this lady would reside, like a spider up in her web, just waiting for people, waiting for victims.
Well, so it does kind of beg the question too of like, why Hemet? We get
Well,
that question all the time with the film festival, but I get
Yeah.
to throw it out to someone else
I,
now. So
I just
yeah,
gotta say, yeah, it's like hearing the title alone, I was like, well, I must see this.
yeah, and you came in, I think it was March, came to Oceanside to watch the second screening of it. And we talked about it after, and we were like,
February.
you're saying
Go ahead.
February, you're saying how, like,
Dan coming in with a
with the facts.
with a
yeah, you were saying how thanks, brother Dan, floating around again there. Uh, we were talking about how it could have really been set anywhere. And I think the reason, I mean, I threw around some ideas, but when Hemet started kind of being where I thought I would set it, uh, it was one, what we were talking about right now, about how it just makes sense for a place where it's more affordable and where people would gravitate to. You know, I have moved out to Riverside because it was more affordable than where I lived, and so I could see, and especially in a time of hardship and an emergency, people would want to they would want to go someplace more affordable and be a great place for someone to take advantage of that. Uh, my first impression of Hemet was when I was a kid. We had family friends that lived up here, and we'd visit them, and I just thought of it as, oh, it's really far away. It's super long drive, and we'd really just go to this house and we hang out there, and I just thought, oh yeah, it's fine. It's just really far away. I knew someone um like I don't know, a decade ago, someone who I didn't like moved to Hemet, and I thought that that was kind of a personal aspect of the movie, was thinking about that person and their worldview, and that was what got me kind of like teasing the idea. And then I looked up like what the word Hemet even means, and it means home. And so for the concept of this movie, I was like, that's kind of a perfect title also. So it just kind of started feeling more and more right. Um, but yeah, it was that element. It was the social element of it, and Hemet does have a reputation. I don't really think it's true, but there's a stereotype of every place of, Ocean Beach or Santee or whatever. And I didn't even really know about this until I started thinking about setting the movie there. I looked it up, and oh, it's old people, or this or that, and it's like, okay. And then there was another thing. When I would talk to people about Hemet, they didn't really know about it that much, but they had heard of it. Oh, it's weird, or oh, it's out in the middle of nowhere or whatever. It's like, I don't know. I've been there. I don't. We didn't even end up filming anything, a single frame of footage of this movie in Hemet. We filmed it in Ramona. We filmed the exteriors in Ramona, the interiors in La Jolla. But there was this kind of like fairy tale mythos about Hemet, and this kind of personal aspect of it being close to where I live and close to where I lived when I was young. And it always just kind of being, you know, far but not too far, like just kind of removed from my world, uh, just enough to where it still felt kind of personal, knowing a few people out there. And so there's just this kind of interesting, like, fairy tale aspect of that, and setting a movie there and just kind of examining the mystery of that, and just kind of seeing what happens. So that was the idea for the early stages of the script. But as you see in the movie, like I said, we didn't film anything there, and I think we mentioned the location like twice in the
Yeah.
movie. Someone talks about the tax incentive or something,
Yeah,
and then
there's a
someone,
conversation about like drug dealers and it's easier to get here because of the tax incentive.
yeah, and this guy talks about how yeah, anyone in Hemet under 40 was either born here, or they had to move here or something like that, which isn't true, I don't think, but that's this kind of cartoony world. Pretty much every single character in the movie is kind of a caricature in some sort of way.
It's funny
Um,
though because you kind of did step into like the world of people from Hemet kind of have that view. There is a certain level of like a pull to the town where if you don't have enough escape velocity, you're going to end up back there kind of thing. So that line ends up being very kind of surprisingly on point.
oh, cool.
Yeah, and as speaking of the origin of the word Hemet, and there's been, we've heard kind of everything
Oh yeah.
growing up,
Oh yeah.
and one theory was the word actually means the box, and that there's sort of this Hemet curse that if you so the curse is that if you move away from Hemet and then you move back to Hemet for whatever reason, you're stuck there.
Hmm.
And so this idea of like the box is sort of like this place that traps you. that's always been like the mythology that we kind of grew up hearing. And so even like, a bit of warning, like if you leave, you better stay
Yeah,
gone.
never come back.
You only get to leave one time.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah,
There's a very like fairy tale quality to that too.
yeah,
Leave, but
absolutely.
don't come back.
Yeah,
Then you
yeah,
accidentally come back, like you trip
yeah,
over the line, trip over the city limits or something like that. And
exactly. And you're
Well,
like, nope, that counts. Yeah,
I also like kind of what you're saying about Hemet sort of existing to you on like slightly the periphery and like kind of just it's always close but not too far because it almost
yeah,
describes Hemet as like a squiggle in your vision. Like you just kind
Mhm.
of can't quite focus on it, which
Yeah,
I really like that as a concept for like
yeah.
defining Hemet in relation to anything.
It's mythological.
yeah, it's funny. Like people would say today maybe that like Temecula is more popular or whatever, but when I was a kid, I don't think I really knew about Temecula or
That's because
Murrieta.
Temecula was a road.
Yeah,
You
exactly.
just drove through it.
The first place to get populated out here, and now Murrieta and Temecula are getting like super crowded and
So the landlady, Liz, the writing on it is remarkably fast too, like in the delivery and kind of the I don't know, like the sort of speech pattern. Were you
Mhm.
looking at like was that a constant rewrite thing? Was she locked down pretty early on? Like how did that character
Mhm.
keep evolving as you went through the process of making this?
I had kind of had the idea for the voice of the character for a while, and when I combined that with the idea to make the movie, I kind of think that Liz kind of wrote the script, like not even just her dialogue, but some of the other characters' dialogue. But her dialogue definitely stands out as its own thing, and almost feels like she's like in a different universe than the other characters. She almost feels like a cartoon character or something. But yeah, so in the writing of it, it was definitely kind of just channeling Liz's mindset, and it is kind of this like hyper profane dialogue, and it is like a mile a minute. And I started thinking recently, like it would make sense if the movie started with her like chugging like a Red Bull or like a Monster, because you're just like people half her age, people half her age don't have this much
Mhm.
energy, and I don't think, but I don't think I think if you're a sharp old person, you could probably think and speak fast. I don't think we really betray her age too much. Like there's a couple scenes where she does her physical prowess is maybe a little bit more exaggerated, but for the most part, it's to me it's kind of believable. It's maybe just on the border. I don't think it really veers out into like, all right, this couldn't be, but she's definitely a larger than life character. And yeah, so it was the dialogue was the voice existed, but the idea of her talking a lot was actually based on a landlady that I had who spoke a lot. That's kind of the only thing I took from her. It's based on a couple different landlords that I had, but from this person specifically, she wouldn't necessarily talk fast, but she would talk a lot. She's kind of charming, but there were times when it felt a little passive aggressive, and it would she didn't leave like the worst impression, but when I was living near her, because she did live in the same complex, like right across from me, um, there was this kind of dread and there was this kind of like like when someone like you say have a good day and they go have a great day, and you're just kind of like, all right,
You're like, we're gonna have a
gonna
passive aggressive fight on just passing. All right, cool.
yeah, you're just gonna one up my greeting and so there was all kinds of stuff like that. But that was the inspiration behind the character talking a lot. The character talking fast is, I think, if I talked any slower, she says so many words. I think really
We'd have a
3 hours,
longer
Like
movie.
a, yeah.
it's 3 hours long. I had to get through it to keep that was the writer in me like, fuck, dude, keep don't drag this out too much.
It
And it
should
just
be
kind of fit.
said for those who haven't seen the movie yet, though, but Brian, you play the landlady.
Mhm.
Play the landlady.
Yeah. So that might not be, and look, so you can see Dan pointing there at the poster. So you can see this sweet young man, Brian, transformed into this monster of a woman. Um, and so it was always in your mind to play the landlady, right? They sort of came together, like you creating this character and the story. Did they kind of evolved at the same time?
Yeah. Yeah. Like originally, I had this kind of the first idea was like, God, man, Landlady really pisses me off, and I was just gonna make him like kind of like just the regular kind of thriller about a landlord, and then I just it was one of those ideas where you're just like think about it for a while and you forget about it, and then later on, I think when I had the idea to well, what if this character that I came up with, what if that was the landlady? You know, so I wasn't thinking
Hmm.
about playing the landlady at first, but when I thought about that old lady character that I was coming up with playing the landlady, and I was like, okay, this is more interesting now. So it was kind of that synthesis that drove this version of the script. So
Yeah.
that's whatever. Maybe that was just me. Yeah, I want to dress up like an old lady and curse a lot. I don't know, but
I mean, we all
that
have
was
dreams.
yeah, exactly. So
Yeah. Yeah.
that's when I was like, this is exciting because the first idea of the story was kind of boring and that idea kind of set things off, and then sitting down to write the script and kind of channeling that and that dialogue coming out, that was when I started to really like it.
Mhm. Were you kind of in your room, like doing the voice and like doing the lines, and you're like writing, and you're like, no, 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 like doing the, was
A
it
little
like that
bit, yeah.
physical, or was it? Yeah, yeah,
Not, I
yeah.
mean, it wasn't like it probably wasn't loud or anything, but
Uh-huh.
there's probably a little bit of like maybe like say the line like quietly so my wife doesn't
Uh-huh.
hear.
Uh-huh.
Or and then when then typing it out or typing it out and then saying it and just kind of seeing how it sounds, you know.
So
Uh
to the other thing
Can
is to
I interrupt?
go for it,
Sorry.
Daniel. Yeah, please.
So I can touch a little bit more on this subject. It's not directly related to the movie, more so like how the movie kind of just popped into um, more than an idea. So Brian was doing ADR with the director on another film back in 2018, and I'm sure Brian already had like an idea written, whatever. But he was doing in between takes, he was doing this voice, and this is a voice that I've heard all my life. He's done this voice before, so it was like, oh, finally he's showing it to somebody else, and the director thought it was so funny that he's like, oh, I would like to like have that character in a film, and that's kind of how the movie started. And I remember the director at one of the Q&As brought it up. Tony, he brought it up, and I thought about it and I was like, I didn't realize it at the time, but I was sitting in the room when this happened. I was at the director's house with Brian doing the ADR, and he was doing the voice, and I just didn't think much of it until like now, I
yeah.
guess, and then realizing like, oh, okay. And also, by the way, he actually looks very, very similar to our grandmother in the makeup. It's kind of weird. It's kind of weird. Not exactly like, but very similar. It's strange.
Yeah, I think I was kind of already wanting Tony to direct it. It was definitely I had the gears turning and we were doing the ADR and I was like, this might be a good opportunity to audition this. And because I just kind of knew, like I just kind of knew he would he would be one of the people to find this fun. I didn't know what many people would think of it, but I'm pretty sure like I was like he'll probably dig this. And I just thought that the idea of a dystopian world with all these overlapping character arcs, was kind of similar to his movie he did South of Eight, and he also made a short film about an old lady in a wheelchair who's like a witch curse, and so I just kind of was like, this is kind of your vibe,
It's your
my dude.
wheelhouse.
So I'm gonna just like throw this out there and.
And to make sure he gets his flowers on this is Tony Olmos.
Almost. Yeah.
Olmos, who
Almost.
is the director of this as well. Yeah. Make sure we have that name in there for the listeners and everything too.
Oh
So
yeah, he kicked ass. He painted it. He put up flats in his house and painted them pink and green and filmed a bunch of locations there. And
So, in speaking with the transformation, yes, there is it looks like a caked on level of makeup to achieve the look. So I do kind of want to touch base on some of like the VFX elements of it as well. Like, what was that process like to structure out the look of the landlady?
yeah, well the landlady's face was all just a latex mask glued on. And
Practical.
we actually glued on uh a different mask at first. It was much more witchy with like a long like chin and a long nose, and it was just too exaggerated. So we had this other option that was a little more human looking, and we tried that. We did like a makeup test and looked way better. And that makeup test, we did more of a there was even more of a like eyeshadow and lipstick on Liz, whereas in the movie it's kind of just like a lot of caked on foundation. But there was like more blush. It was much more like traditional like glamour makeup. Um, and then when we were filming the movie, yeah, we just kind of went for that kind of flat look. Um, and except in the last scene, well, not in the last, but there is a scene in the movie where we go for a different look for Liz,
Mhm.
which when she doesn't have the makeup caked on. And that was actually much more of an intense makeup, and I actually like that look a lot better. But they gave me like liver spots, and they tried to make it look like what her real skin would look like. Whereas the
Mhm.
rest of the movie is like this lady just cakes on her makeup and her face is orange, you
Well, I
know.
think to speak to it too, something that stands out to me was in watching it is, definitely you do a look like that. It's going to stand out to a degree, right? Like it's going to look one way or another. But I think it actually kind of lends itself to this sort of slightly odd realism going on with the film. We have this idea of like taking some things we know, like the bath salts conversation, and making this zombie sort of outbreak. And it gives her look just enough of like, it's real, but I can kind of tell it's weird. But like, I buy into it with the world. Like it kind of actually, I think, unintentionally helps anchor the film really well to that look.
It's good. It like a bridge almost of like the absurd elements and the reality
Yeah,
is
like we'll skip the uncanny valley by building a bridge across it.
right, right.
So, my involvement in the film is very brief. I was on set for maybe like 4 or 5 days. Uh, Not even all the locations at my dad's house. We did all the exteriors at our dad's house in Ramona, and then the interiors were done at the director's house in La Jolla. And I didn't actually go to the La Jolla location. I'd been there before, but I was very limited on time. I what was I doing? Oh, you know what it was? It was the middle of the pandemic, and I was just too afraid to do anything. I was just like I'm
Fair.
just, it's not worth being like everywhere at once. I was like, I'll come by for a few days and I'll take some pictures from a distance, and made good use of my zoom lens. But for the most part, I didn't really become involved until the film was done, or not done, but like post production had wrapped. And then I was kind of in Brian's little posse of people that he would submit like little rough cuts to, just to kind of get feedback, and then we'd give him feedback, and then he'd change a little stuff. Oh, okay, how about this? How about that?
Had you read
And
the
then
script before, or the first time you saw the story was in the movie?
no, so I didn't read the script, but I did show up in May before you guys shot the movie, and I sat in
Oh,
for the script reading, and I
yeah.
took a lot of
Oh.
pictures. I took a lot of pictures during the script reading too. But that was the first time I heard the story, and I was just excited that there was such a big cast. His last movie was just two people talking the whole time, and even though that was a short feature, it's hard to imagine an audience like wanting to engage for such a extended period. That when there's a big cast, it's like, okay, well, um, it just kind of has a better appeal, and it's also a full length movie in color, which is different from his last movie too. But yeah, basically my involvement was, just little like, hey, maybe try this, maybe try that in post production, and then now just well, for the last year since it premiered, just been a PR blitz.
So if scoping back a little bit, just because I always like to ask this question when we have our guests on, it just feels like it's been forever, so I'm kind of getting the rust off. But what was the kind of part for you in your life where you started going like, this is kind of where I want to go? Like this is this creative level, this doing film, this being involved, this feels right.
Yes, yeah. Oof. I really think that I'm so like one track minded. I think it was like when I was like 7 or 8. Like I tried making like a whole like Frankenstein feature with my video camera, and like I just played all the characters. I played Dr. Frankenstein, Igor, Frankenstein. I think I had my friend and like his sisters, like I asked them to be in the movie and stuff too. But that was like super ambitious, and it just kept going like through high school, making like short
Hmm.
films and but when I became serious is probably like I was like 10 years ago, and when I started actually being like I'm not just filming myself in my room anymore. I'm gonna get people together and try to make like a cohesive thing. That was like 10 years ago. I made my first short film, Hatred, at my dad's house. And that was when it was like, okay, this could maybe be like a serious thing. And writing that, shooting that, editing it, putting it out, that just be kind of became like the new process as opposed to like a totally different type of movie making when I was a kid, which was like fun, but how many people are going to want to watch that stuff, you know?
Mhm.
But yeah, it's like it's so difficult, you know, like Daniel was saying, it's like, oh my God, it'd be so much easier to just find a different thing to do, like find a different hobby or something, you know. And
Like
there are
model
times,
building.
yeah, yeah. And it's like I do think like every movie you make is like one out of 10, you know. There's like probably like 9 or 10 other ideas that you've
Mhm.
already dismissed. They're just like it's not worth it. It's too difficult, you know.
Yeah,
the
I
the
kind of
process.
think of it as momentum, right? Is like certain ideas have momentum behind them, and then you sort of just whichever idea kind of has the most momentum ends up being the one that gets made, right? So it's like it could be an opportunity or like a time. It sounds like in some ways it was what was happening. It was sort of like maybe the momentum was social in some ways, that kind of made this idea like kept coming back to it and made it stick.
Yeah, it just felt right. It's
Well,
just like
and
feels
then the
right.
character, like the ADR session, it's like it sort of passes the first test. It like it makes someone laugh and entertains somebody, and you're like, it's funny. It just like that's like, oh, there might be air just because this person had this reaction to that character. Um, so that's like another I like momentum
And he banks on it,
thing.
and that gets the movie made. Like,
Yeah, yeah.
God, I can't do this shit by myself. Like, you need a crew, you need a team, you know?
Yeah. How'd you sort of meet your team, going from I'm filming a Frankenstein movie all by myself to now I've got this ensemble cast, someone else is directing it. How'd you, meet all these people?
I think the first thing I did in terms of filmmaking, it was South of Eight. I met the director of Hemet. I met uh, doing like a short play. Like I did a short play. He was there because he knew somebody else, and he came up to me after. He's like, "I'm gonna put you in my movie." And I was like, "This is like too good to be true. Cool. That's a good day. I hope this happens." And it was like, maybe it'll happen." And it turned out it was like the lead in the feature. This was after like several years of like trying to be an actor and get an agent and like nothing and doing like background acting and stuff. So it wasn't just like right out of the gate. It was like several years of trying and not even being able to get like good like lead roles in like plays and stuff. But then he cast me as the lead in his movie South of Eight, and in the making of South of Eight, the idea of my short script comes up, and Tony, the director, and Luke Pensabene, who was producing South of Eight, they were both like, "Yeah, let's make this short film." So like right in the middle, like maybe 6 months into shooting South of Eight, because we shot that movie for like a couple years. About 6 months into that shoot, we did this short movie Hatred. So Tony DP'd that, and we filmed that at my dad's house. So that was kind of the beginning, just a very small crew. Danny did sound on that.
Is there a next project or anything or something that you've got kind of in the works following
Yeah.
this one?
Yeah, there's a feature film that we shot this summer. It's called Corpse in Kensington.
Cool.
So another location in the title movie. It takes place in Kensington, San Diego, and there's colorful caricatures in this movie too. It's
Is this
also
something that you
horror.
wrote? You wrote
Yes,
this? Yeah, cool, cool.
wrote this one, directed it. Didn't really act in it, but wrote and directed. And there's horror elements. There's comedy elements. A lot less cursing, but still a lot of cursing. So maybe like
Huh.
a normal amount of cursing.
Yeah.
Um,
What do you feel like now that that's been shot? And I guess what do you feel like from Hemet to Corpse in Kensington? What do you feel like what was your growth you think between the two movies?
where did it go? Yeah, like I don't know. There is definitely this. Hemet is not this stain by any like I look at Hemet as like, man, that one was pretty cool, guys. Like I liked how that one turned out. Uh, and Corpse in Kensington is so different, and I'm very proud of it. And I can kind of see where it's going, and I think it's going to be an improvement. But it is so different that it's like there's going to be fans who like Hemet more. There's going to be fans who like Corpse in Kensington more. I do think Kensington is more like accessible of a movie. It's less cartoony, but there's still like satirical elements to it. There are horror elements to it. It's maybe more of a slow burn. I think Hemet's kind of a slow burn, but Corpse and Kensington's like really a slow burn. Um, but the growth, it was like I did a fundraiser for it, which I'd never done before. I was always like
Cool.
too like timid to try to do that. Did a
I think that's
fundraiser.
very relatable to a
Yeah.
lot of people. Yeah.
Yeah, because
It's like,
everyone's always telling you, oh, you gotta do the fundraiser. Like, I
and you're
know.
like, yeah.
I gotta do a fundraiser.
But that's amazing.
What if it
That's
doesn't
amazing.
work? And blah.
Yeah.
But you also like learn a lot about fundraising as you go, and so that was an interesting part of it. Kind of made the movie on a little bit of a bigger scale, and yeah, I think it shows. I think we had a little bit more uh equipment and definitely a bigger crew, and you can tell in the footage it definitely looks a little bit more polished. And as an idea, it was like I do think the ideas are both equal, but it's just so different. It was like instead of this absurd political satire kind of slasher movie, it was this more like personal kind of like romantic movie, very dark and just really sad. This just kind of a really sad but funny movie that I think is so much more about the characters. It's like Hemet almost. I think Hemet does have character development, quite a bit of character development, but it almost feels like Hemet has so much plot in the 90-minute
Hmm.
runtime that it's like this big percent is this plot and all these like puzzle pieces that fit together, and then there's a little bit of the character to squeeze in, but it's so crazy and entertaining, and it's almost like you just don't have time to worry about that stuff. And then Corpse and Kensington's almost the opposite. It's like all character, and there is a plot. Like there's a total story, and there's an arc for the characters, and there's things that they want, and it is constantly moving forward. But it's just there's so much less moving parts that it has all this room to breathe, I think. And so you're just able to focus so much more on the characters. And so I think it's a much more mature movie, and it's more character driven. And I think it's a little bit weirder in a way because it's the story is so much simpler that it has the freedom to just kind of get a little weirder, and
Yeah.
a little bit more taking on the character's point of view and reality versus what's in their imagined in their head. Whereas Hemet is pretty just straightforward. Like this character goes here, does this thing, and then this thing, and then they have this object and they move it here, and you
Yeah.
know, um,
It's like yeah, like a punk rock movie. And then
yeah,
maybe in the other one you think it's like in like music terms, it's maybe more of a jazz movie where it's like the chords are more interesting and
It's
there's
about
more
the notes you
space,
don't play.
but the yeah.
exactly.
While Hemet is like, "Arr." But we're super excited because we have some short films that are playing before you guys. And I feel very, very excited in the curation of the tone that builds up to your guys' movie. So I'm like very excited for you guys to see what plays in front of it, especially the last two
Yeah, the last two are going to be an
that play
interesting
before
build.
your guys's. I think you're going to very, very much enjoy in very good company in that regard. So
Good. I'm glad you guys are setting the stage.
Yeah.
Uh,
And then we'll just then we'll show everything and then we'll hang out. So so feel free to come anytime. I mean, the Friday night is the opening night party, so that's going to be 6 to about 10 o'clock. And that's actually going to be open to the public that opening night. So we're just hoping to get as many people in the theater as possible. We're doing a special screening of something at 8:30 that was filmed in Hemet and takes place in Hemet in the late 80s.
Yeah, I'm just excited to hear the audience reaction. I hope
Yeah.
it's reaction because I think it's a lot of fun. I think it's a fun audience movie. And I'm excited to see the movies before it too. Sounds like we're in good company. Sounds like
Yeah.
Excited to
Oh,
see
I
it.
do want to give a shout out to Whitney Wegman, helping her push her movie, and she got her film "The Last Butterflies" in your film festival. So,
Oh yeah,
I think that's playing the block before, so I'm gonna try to make it to that.
That's
It
the
is,
6 to
yeah.
7 block.
Yep.
No more
Brian
90.
Butler, Daniel Butler, thank you so much for being on. We appreciate it. Daniel, thank you for co-hosting with me to this time. It's always a fun one when we have you on. And this has been the Hemet Film
Thanks.
Festival podcast. Please join us November 8th, 9th, and 10th. This is going to be an amazing year.
Yes. HemetFilmFest.com for tickets and passes.